Hey, folks, welcome to another meeting of the minds around the security table. This is Chris Romeo. I'm also joined by Izar Tarandosh, Matt Coles, Tanya Ward, and we're going to pick right up where we left off at the end of the last episode. Last episode, we were talking about acronyms and abbreviations and all the different things that we use in the world of security. And towards the end of that conversation, we started talking about what is application security. And after 15 minutes of scratching our heads, we really didn't reach any conclusions there. And so in this conversation, I want to define application security as a starting point, because it is such a big part of the world now. We should really have a good idea what it means. So let's see. I'm looking to see who's looking away from me everybody is. Wow, nobody wants to define application security. Okay, well, thanks for joining the security table, and look forward to another. No, I'm just kidding.
This is the security under the table episode. Nobody wants to go there.
Yeah, that'll be the CD under the table, a special episode. Yeah, but so who's got a definition? Tanya, when you hear application security, how would you define it?
Right now. Firmware security, application security, hardware security. I mean, in its grandest theme, I would imagine application is anything to do with web-based applications that are deployed potentially on your own infrastructure. And but then it gets a bit confusing, because then cybersecurity is kind of popping up in there. And then there's, so actually, to be honest, I feel it's like almost next to impossible to have a consistent definition that everyone would agree with.
So let me take a crack. At this, if I may. So I'm going to refer to. Actually, I found a good article that I can refer to here from VMware. The folks at VMware who do some work in this space have defined application security as the process of developing, adding, and testing security features within applications to prevent security vulnerabilities. Well, that's great. Except for now we have to define what an application is. So what is an application? Well, if we, in another article I was looking at, not from VMware, but from somebody else, talking about application being that layer 7 thing. So something that operates at layer 7.
Yikes.
Not necessarily strictly web, but obviously web applications fit there. And I guess they're in the name already, web applications. Things that process at that level, if we consider those things applications, then application security is dealing with those things. So we're talking about business systems, we're talking about software, we're talking about control, dashboards and whatnot that expose information or bells and whistles or knobs.
Isn't that kind of a circular? It's a circular reference, though, to say that like an application is anything that's at layer 7, which is called application. Yeah, it's like it's like it doesn't. It's something. It's a circular reference. It doesn't really define it to say it's layer.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm just the pundit here. I'm just here to attack what everybody else says. I'm not here for original thought.
I have a better idea. Okay, so. Okay, this is gonna. What is not an application?
There you go.
the way that Matt started going in, and that I think Tanya started going in, was that an application should have some form of interface with a user, with people, with something. But then, is a server an application? Is a daemon an application? They live by themselves and they do their stuff, but they do get input sometimes. So are those applications or not? So yeah. I would say that an application is probably something that runs by itself, gets input, processes it, and has some kind of output. And the reason why I say works by itself is just to, for example, separate it from a library. Right? A lot.
So, yeah. So I just did a search, and good if you could find other definitions. So if we're talking about what the definition of an application is, what I find is a computer program designed to carry out a specific task other than one relating to the operation of the computer itself, typically to be used by end users, word processors, media players, and accounting software. Examples, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that
on a high
part.
level.
Yeah.
But it kind of like
desktop applications. Yeah.
Yeah, that the first part of that
Mobile
definition sounded pretty
things
good.
that run on
I
your
think
cell
it
phone
started
might
to
be
kind of
considered
fall off.
mobile
It started to
apps,
sound like
those
a
are
90s
applications.
definition when you get to like, oh, word processors and, you know, but they're not the focus. Like when I think of like, I mean, how much time have you spent securing your word processor in your?
Why not? If
Wait,
people
Notepad
didn't
always
spend
seems like to
time
be one of the.
securing
Oh, that's
Notepad, we
calculator.
might
Sorry,
have
that's the
fewer
thing that
vulnerabilities
everybody
in
always
Windows.
pops. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, okay. So I mean, I like if we put these things together. I like where Izar was going because I think the most basic definition is and maybe if we put these two things together, a program that isn't an operating service that takes some input and provides some output. It's
and
pretty basic. And does some processing. Takes some input, does some processing, and provides some output. Is a pretty basic definition. Now, does anybody want to argue against that as an application?
I would then say, where does product fit into that? Because some people would classify some applications as being potential products.
So I want to address that. I think products is a word for it. Product security is a domain that encompasses application security, but it encompasses other things as well. You mentioned it earlier around firmware and hardware and the operating system and other aspects for things that are called products. Now, my definition of product are things we generally sell or make available to individuals or organizations or for use outside of the team or the org or the company that's building them. So, for instance, if you're building a mobile application that you're going to deliver into an app store and people can download it, pay 99 cents, that could be considered a product. It's an application, but it's also a product. Things that you sell. I think that word product has been used more generically for anything that you build and then make available to others, but that may be within your organization. So if you build a business application as an IT group, your product to the rest of the org, is that business application? I don't know that that's true, what I would consider product, but that's up for debate, I suppose. But the product is the collection of things that make up
product sits above.
That's
just above application.
Where an application may be a
just to reinforce
a grouping of things that provide a service.
It's a grouping of
reinforce what Matthew just said. Usually, when you go in front of a VC with an idea, an MVP or something, you are showing something that's close to an application. It's an app, it's a service, but it's something that does something. And then the next question that I have is, okay, but how do you turn that into a product? So yeah, you do have the idea that the product is the envelope that takes that functionality and turns it into something that you can commercialize, right? But I would go back and say that in order to be able to commercialize that, then you need a whole set of infrastructure things. How are you going to take money from people? How are you going to serve that reliably? How are you going to all sorts of scaffold things that you have to put around that idea that you have that turn it into an actual thing that you can call a product. So in our terms, I think that, and already jumping ahead on the discussion, the differentiation between AppSec and prod security is that at prod security, we are looking way beyond that unit of processing that takes input and produces output. And we are looking at the things that make it live in the world and integrate with other things and do so reliably and do so in a scalable way. So it's going from your cloud provider to the way that you actually let people interact with it.
I would be careful about saying that products don't have to be things
zero money is too money.
Why do we care? Like, why do we care what let's kind of back up. Why do we actually care what the definition is? I mean, security, regardless of where it is, like, and this is what I'm trying to think about in terms of what you're saying. We have this concept of what application is. Okay, you may have many applications in a product or whatever it may be. Security evolves and change, I guess, based on these different stacks as you kind of talk about it, right? Like when you think about how you secure an application, there's going to be some level of foundations there, but all those things that go into a product becomes a lot more complex. So I don't know. I'm still like, why do we care about the definition?
I think we care.
Okay.
The scope, but there's also capability, and I say capability for the people who are responsible for the care and feeding of that thing and the security of it, right? There's a particular. I think we find in general that between cybersecurity and product security, that the things that we need to worry about differ, right? So if you're deploying something internally, you have certain aspects. You may be within a defined infrastructure environment that has certain capabilities, and so you're going to take that application and integrate it with, your SIEM and your auth provider and your secret provider and et cetera. And you want it to all fit within that ecosystem. Whereas on a product side, it's generally something that somebody else is going to consume, somebody else is potentially going to manage, and therefore you need to design and implement it in a different way. It needs to be pluggable and upgradable, or it needs to be able to fit within something else and not within your defined environment. And so I think that while it's all security, some of the implications differ based on those two aspects.
I want to come back around to
There's a lot of commonality, but
a product is something that it could be something that's free, and it could be something that's for money. What do you think of as a product that's free? Is that a product, though?
Is that a product?
Anything delivered as open source on GitHub?
I don't know. I think that it's a Lego block that can be made into a product, but it lacks exactly all that scaffolding that we talked about. So it's a potential product.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of a product that doesn't exist to make money.
Just be careful of doesn't exist to make money versus is made available for free, right? So you can have open source hardware and open source software that can be combined together.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the product is a reference implementation, right? You may not make any money off of it, and you may provide it as as an offering out to consumers.
I agree with Chris. I don't know any product out there. You may get a free product, but there may be a subscription associated with it to upsell into something. I would challenge us to think, is there actually, to your point, Chris, is there anything free out there? Because you have to pay for people to do this work.
Yeah, you add revenue. I mean, if you're going to do that, then anything that's supported by ads could be potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking like social media, like Facebook, for example. But Facebook is technically free, but is it really?
No.
It's not, because they're selling my views of ads and everything, right? Like, so. Yes, okay. I'm the product in that.
So what about Mastodon?
You're the product in Facebook, right?
Yeah. So there is no way to pay for Mastodon, right? It's an open source.
You can donate to those people who maintain and keep nodes. You don't have to. You may, because it's the right thing to do. By the way, donate to your Mastodon node maintainer.
So is Mastodon a product then? I have no guarantee. There's no contractual language or anything.
But do you need that for a product?
I'm spitballing here. Like, do I need it for a product? That's what I'm kind of spitballing out loud, almost like, is it a product or is it just a free service for communication?
Wait. Let's go back to definitions. Is a service different from a product? But that I think yes,
Is the service different
because
from
you
the
can't
application?
offer no, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't.
The application talks to a service.
I've never heard of an application. I've heard of product managers. I don't know if I've ever really heard of a
That'd be more of an ops function.
application
Like an application manager would be somebody who'd be
manager.
running and scaling the execution
Exactly.
of an application. So, yeah. So where does this leave us?
So service, yeah.
Well, so I'd like to offer, I have in my career, I have been I always pitch myself as a product security person.
Yep.
Right? That and I do that to differentiate myself from IT and cybersecurity traditionally. Now those lines are being very much blurred with cloud and containers and these and having an ecosystem that goes from device to cloud and everything in between. And so it's a lot harder now to say product security. It's amorphous.
He's going to say, I know that he's going to say
down what that means. It also potentially is very limited.
No, he's going to say we are DevSecOps consultants now.
System security.
Hey, there's no swearing on this podcast, okay? So
Absolutely.
you cannot use that word.
Absolutely not. That's why I paused. Yeah, absolutely not. So system security is, or ecosystem security. It is not universally recognized, I think, but and it maybe is a cop out to some extent. But it's hard to say product security nowadays because that when I say product security, that gets misinterpreted also sometimes as, well, if you're building a financial application, that you then make available, like Fidelity or whoever, they make their platform available to customers. Is that a product? I wouldn't traditionally consider that a product. I would consider an appliance, a piece of hardware that has a software.
Well, in the Fidelity example,
customers and they deploy in their environment is a product. But maybe that's a hardware product.
But to complicate this even more, the Fidelity example you just used, I'm not paying the software and the infrastructure is enabling me to use the service. Like what I buy from Fidelity is a investment account, a window into being able to take my dollars and turn them into a share of Berkshire Hathaway. It's the applications and the systems support that. But Fidelity is more of a service in the way that I'm buying it. It's through the systems and applications and
how do you access that?
But I'm not buying
service.
At least I don't think so. When I open an account at Fidelity, I'm not buying access to they're giving me access to their infrastructure in exchange for making a commission on every time I buy a share of Google or whatever. We're all looking more confused than when we actually started this conversation.
Are we any closer?
This side. Software security.
Well, then you completely eliminate hardware.
Well, then you could have hardware security. I mean, it's like taking application, all these other complex. Well, then you have infrastructure security as well. I just think it's so confusing.
We need a new term for what we do. We got to come up with a new term.
It's confusing. I mean,
it's not AppSec. It's not software security. It's not hardware security. It's not product security. It's all of these things. That's what we do.
Exactly. Okay. But how do we secure all of those?
It's all of those things and none. Please.
Can also be
okay, I'll do it. It's not all of those things and none.
And none of them. None security. So I was thinking security unicorn.
What about non-security?
Maybe as a potential. Oh yeah.
Yep.
That has connotations.
Okay, so let's try to come back around to where we started, and because we really wanted to define application security and product security. That was our goal. We kind of got off on a tangent trying to unravel what those individual terms mean. But I think we came up with a definition for application in that it was a program that takes some type of input, does some type of processing, puts some type of output out. I think Matt gave us a good definition for product security as being, kind of almost an umbrella of other disciplines of security, but applied to a given product. So let's come back around to, if we put application and security together, now what are we talking about? Because we kind of started trying to define it, and then we went off on what is an application. Let's come back around. So what is application security then?
No, go.
Well, so it's, I think now if we now have a definition of what an application is, and by the way, I think we've just decided application is software primarily, or strictly software.
Yeah.
That operates at a particular level. Well, security, application security then is securing that thing, right? So securing its data, its function, the things that we know how to talk about because we do threat modeling, we do code analysis, etc., right? And so all of the techniques and all of the capabilities and all of the skill set and whatnot that comes with how do you protect code from being compromised and how to protect data from being exposed.
Sorry, Tanya, and that may involve both software disciplines, but at some point in some way a bit of hardware where things start hitting the wire and getting lower level. Things, for example, would you say the things like all the side channel attacks with memory and on processor pipelines and all this?
Well, that's not application security, though.
That's my question. Is it?
That's hardware.
But it involves firmware.
That's firmware is hardware. Firmware is software that runs on hardware.
Firmware, yeah.
But you have to keep those things in mind. If you're going to
exactly.
If you're going to threat model an application, you don't ignore the network. In fact, you have to know the properties of the network, right? And so if you're going to build an application that lives on a cloud service somewhere,
but isn't that what the cloud does for us, though? The cloud gives us the ability to not care about what sits underneath the application. Like that's why I use. I didn't say trust. I didn't say trust. I didn't say trust. You never heard me say that word. I didn't say I trust it. I said it gives me the ubiquitous ability to throw an application onto the cloud, and poof, it starts serving up. It starts processing requests without me worrying about things like the having to. I don't have to do anything. I have to worry about the underlying hardware, the underlying network, but I don't have to do anything to make it work.
You do realize that this is how we got to this point in life, right? Because somebody back there said, I'm just going to write this code and I don't have to worry about it because somebody else is going to take care. Like the cloud is just somebody else's computer.
Of course.
It's a bumper sticker, but it's true. So yeah, you should care. The fact that you're not directly responsible or that you can't be responsible for those processes doesn't take the responsibility of caring away from you.
Sure, you still have to trust. You still have to investigate to ensure that
verify.
Trust but verify. It's a little bit of both, right? But I guess let me ask you this question, just to go completely off on a tangent that we never even imagined.
Wait. Tanya was going to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, before you do that, Tanya's.
No, I was just. I mean, I'm hearing you all talk, and I'm just scratching my head here, right? All these separate sections, right? We're talking about, we have the cloud and we have applications that sit on top of the cloud. And then we have products, but they have firmware as well. And I think that's one of the fundamental problems is all of these things, they're like little security limpets in each of these different sections. And it maybe goes back to your point, Matt, is how do you have to look at a system as a whole, right? So even if you have an application that you're deploying on a cloud, you as that person need to make sure that all the kind of like little wires are being plugged in, like in the most secure way as possible, and not just go, I'm just application security. You cloud, you figure it out, because that's where a lot of the problems pop up. It's that lack of, I shouldn't say lack of, but it's maybe the misunderstanding that somebody else is taking care of something, when it's kind of a case where there needs to be some overlap. Like you have to understand where things are going as you're building things for that particular.
Well, and this is, and when if you're doing system development, or you're doing things that we learned in computer science class, right? This is what protocols and interfaces are for, right? Your system has connections to the outside world, and you have to understand what those connections are, understand how things interoperate. You don't necessarily aren't responsible for what's on the other side of that interface, but you have to understand what's coming to you and how you're operating with it. It's no different if you're building an application to deploy into somebody else's cloud. You don't own
yes,
it.
and how they interact with each other. So just to illustrate that, my last job jump, I sort of did a pivot, 180. I went from product security to security products. And now I'm looking from the inside at how the amount of data that we have out there, both about how our applications run, where they run, and how those things where they run. So I went meta twice. The amount of information that we have out there about all these things, and if we can bring them together into this thing, for the lack of a better expression, called observability and security observability, whatever way we put that, we got just this huge amounts of data out there telling us about this universe where all our apps talk to each other and become products and interact with the outside universe, right? And I every day I get more and more surprised by how rich this data is and by the uses that we could or will be making of them, right? And my point is that today, on the past experiences that I have had of product security, we have gotten used to certain looks at how these things work and how we scan them and how we interpret the results. I don't want to use the word siloed, but pretty separated from each one and from the layers. We tend to see these things as layers, and we lose seeing them more as a jigsaw where one piece goes into the other so that they can join, right? So I think that I look at product security more like this jigsaw where these separate pieces, and AppSec is one of them, join each other and are part of each other and trade data at different levels and give us different ways of looking at that puzzle.
So are we jigsaw security specialists now?
I think so, and it's
puzzle, puzzle
just
security specialists.
We have always been, because keyword threat modeling, the modeling part is very much putting the puzzle together, right?
True.
And then the threat elicitation is figuring out what pieces are missing. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was good. So,
yeah.
everyone's a threat modeler. That's what
Everyone.
That's what we just. There's no longer a need for AppSec, ProdSec, any of these things. Just call yourself a threat modeler.
No. There is a need, but what you do is you recognize that you should start as a threat modeler, and then you hang all those other pieces on what you just did on the threat model.
So let me come back to something that Matt said, though. I've been waiting to. Matt uses the term system security. He uses the term system all the time, and effectively, that's what we do now. To Izar's point here about AppSec, ProdSec, hardware, firmware, everything is bubbling up. The challenge is we used to call it system security like back in the late 90s. Like system security is just not that. It feels like something that we've gone past.
Mm-hmm.
And can we circle back around? Is that really what we do right now?
The system is the puzzle.
So, well, and I think the reason why we no longer do that, by and large, is if one considers themselves a specialist or not. So, for instance, in my personal path, I guess, I look at myself as having very broad, but not necessarily very deep in one area experience, right? So when I say system security, I'm looking at hardware, software, firmware, application, everything in between, and some other stuff, right? And so I'm looking at the system as a whole. I look at that. That's the view that I bring to the table. I'm not an expert in one of those things. I may have some deep experience in some of them, but I'm not considered like a specialist in one of them. Whereas I think today we have there's a big emphasis on specialization. And so somebody may be an application security specialist, and that's really what they focus on. They know how to, and potentially around even a subspecialty of that, like web applications, right? Somebody may know everything about web application security and very little about everything else. In fact, we know the network may be foreign to them, in fact, right? Even though a web application has to deal with the network, right? They may not understand all of the ins and outs of how networking works to be able to make that web application work. And so I think we've gone past the term system security because we are tending to put people in boxes.
What do we call the generals? Sorry, Tanya's been waiting. Tanya's been waiting for a long time. Tanya, go.
Go ahead. I'm just translating what you're saying into very simple terms. It's like I'm building a house and I have this big picture of everything that I need. I may need a plumber to come in and do all the piping. I may need an electrician. I need all these different pieces. And what you're saying, at a time and place, it was very simple. I may not need electricity, but now I do. But there isn't really a term for that, to your point. There's no coin.
General contractor.
No, but I'm saying
that's a general contractor.
If you translate it back into security, right?
What about the architect?
There isn't really a term for that person that puts everything together.
I think that we solved one of the problems that we created in the beginning with the circular reference to the layer 7 and to the application, because Matt brought us to a much simpler in double quotes. It's not that things were simpler then. It's just that our scope and our boundaries were smaller. My first official title was a system programmer. And that meant that basically I could do anything from taking a 5 1/4 floppy that somebody put in the wrong slot out of the computer to actually debugging how a Sun 3 station failed to go up. And those were the boundaries. So when you said, hey, I'm going to define one layer as the application, it's because there was only one way of presenting that application. There was only one way of interacting with that application. It was you against the terminal, holding a mouse, clicking on something, and you were there in the application. The application was running in front of you, right? And then applications became bigger, and Mosaic came, and Netscape came, and all that good stuff came, and everything went out. But even then, those were not new things, because at the time, for example, banks and airlines were already operating on time-sharing systems that had terminals remote and everything. So for them, that 7-layer definition perhaps didn't make much sense. But for us, because it was confined, it did. So it's not that we are circular referencing here. It's still the same thing. It's just opened up in scope so much that application became something so almost enlarged and distributed that it went out of that definition. But to Matt's point, just a second, Tony, to Matt's point, I think that the system that today we are responsible for is that jigsaw, is that product. So being working in system security is the nitty-gritty way of saying I work in product security, because the system is the product and the product is the system.
I would love to see a timeline of all these terms and when they started surfacing up, because I'm sure it would have probably been maybe application security, product security, somewhere down the line, firmware security came in with Meltdown and Spectra, or even not way before that, cloud security, like a timeline of all these terms.
You do have that Google
when
tool
they started
that
popping up.
shows you over time how words appear. You could
Google Trends analysis would would show us as people started searching for them as to, how they, when they became available.
I want to be careful though, Tanya. I think it will be interesting to see, but we need to separate words that are that have adjectives added to them, like firmware security, versus I guess the proper nouns here of cybersecurity, application security. I think there's a difference between security of firmware and application security. For instance, right? There's a technology domain versus
Izar's done some rapid research
So Google
with
Trends,
ChatGPT telling him what product security is.
Spiked on 2004.
Interesting.
Spiked. And it went sharply down. It wasn't like 100, and then it went back to 50, and now it's like between 25 and 75 ever since. Meanwhile, application security has always been significantly higher than, which one is red? Yeah, application security has been always significantly higher than product security, and it peaked in February 2014.
When did it begin? When did application security become?
Both of them begin on January 1st, 2004. I can't.
It might be. Yeah, when they started tracking the data.
That's
the data set goes.
Yeah.
I have to.
That might break the cloud right there.
Reference point, right? Cybersecurity.
Oh, my eyes, my eyes. Okay. No, this one hurts. This one hurts. Okay, wait. Let me see if I can. Do I share here?
Hit the share button. Give it this way the audience will be clued in here into Izar's live research capabilities.
I can't. I just can't. Wait. Window.
We're live.
But which one? Is this the right one? Is this the wrong one? Wait. Before I share anything here, let me see what I have open. It's called
Yes, operational security. Crucial. Crucial for maintaining a job.
We'll see security in reverse.
Says you need system permissions to share screens, so it's probably on your system, letting the browser.
You know what? Forget about it. I'll just tell you guys about it. Okay,
just tell us.
Actually, I have visual aids. Wait. Where did I put my...
You can take a screenshot.
Pin, very important.
That's a different show. It's called the Tech Show.
This one down here is product security. This one up here. So this is fraud.
Yeah. For those listening to the audio stream,
somebody else is creating a picture.
Izar is literally writing on his tablet and live.
And this one is cyber.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, there it is.
What am I?
Back up
a little bit. There you go.
Back a little.
Cyber, as we would expect, right? That's the umbrella term that everybody is used.
Damn.
Right, so this is from 2004 to today. And the differences here are, if you consider app a 25, prod is a 5, and here it is a 75, and then 100. So this is the distribution as well.
Wow.
And I need to do something with my handwriting.
I mean,
Wow.
Well, so I guess when I say that when I've talked to people and say product security is a niche, I'm not kidding.
and
so that's a different.
We don't have any other term though. Like, I think
nobody understands what
kind
it
of
is.
way that you walked us into this. Effectively, system security is what we're talking about. But to your point about specialization, like we're missing a term. Somehow we've survived in this industry for 20 years, and we're missing a term that defines someone who understands application security, understands the network, understands maybe enough hardware and firmware to be dangerous. And product security is not that term. At least it hasn't been used in what we're seeing in the data. So is there a term that are we missing a term, or are we just forgetting about a term that somehow exists in our industry that we don't plug into?
That's a unicorn.
Well, so I think. Go ahead, Tanya.
Can I just thing out there that's going to spark a huge debate, right? I'm gonna just kind of throw the definition out there, okay? So, would cybersecurity not be that complete picture? And here's me, because it talks about people, like making sure it's clean. It talks about policies according to this definition, processes and technology to make sure that you're protecting this whole system. Now, if we go back to your analogy of having, you're trying to protect this stack.
Can I sound
maybe
cybersecurity
represents all of that stack.
Tanya,
yeah.
Did you see the look on, like, we were laughing at Izar's reaction to that as he slowly started to bite through his fist. He may have lost a finger in that process of trying to feel in his heart the pain of cybersecurity being everything that we do.
Yeah. Look, I love marketing people. I really love. I have huge respect for what they do, because
it is hard.
Probably could never do it. But some things, after some time, they just become wrong, right? And these umbrella terms and cyber among them, I think that it's like one of the most overused, overhyped, overstressed, over-alarmed terms in history. Nowadays, you just tackle cyber in front of anything that you want money for. And the worst part is people give it to you.
I mean, in my experience, I see the only place I hear people using the term cyber anymore is more on the defense side. Like I don't in the circles, and maybe I walk in very like-minded circles or something. I don't hear people use the term cyber anymore. Do you guys?
Can I walk in those circles too, please?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I live in much more of an AppSec world.
What terms do you hear,
say is the primary term that conversations I'm having with people. But anytime I hear cyber, it's normally somebody that's a defense sector focused people. Yeah, like military or defense contractors and people like that
federal
are still have that term. Everything it's all about cyber. That's where I hear that. Now, maybe other people, do y'all have other experiences? Are you hearing cyber thrown around all over the place still?
Yeah, I hear cyber mostly for network and system defense, but specific to an organization. And that's the traditional way I think of cybersecurity, right? Is somebody who has responsibility for protecting a network environment. Either doing perimeter and firewall, or making sure that applications or other things within that perimeter and that environment are protected and are secure, and incident response and handling and disaster recovery and all that falls into cyber, which again, and maybe this is a bias, and this is certainly a bias that I have, right, in terms of, and maybe some others in the industry have, that cyber is defense of a network, defense of an environment, and not necessarily things that we don't own and control after we ship it, right? Which is where the cyber versus product discussion emanates from, in part. But I hear it all the time, and I think we see it all the time in, whether it be presidential memorandums or executive orders around cybersecurity, or ISC squared and the certifications, or even SANS and the certifications that they produce. They use cyber all over the place to be used outside of the defense contractor environment. So I would, and I was, sorry, Tanya, I have a hard time thinking that what I do is cybersecurity, And we also have, I've worked with companies in the past where cyber and non-cyber.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that a place where you firmly hear cyber and does have a meaning is in the military, where you have the cyber domain of warfare. And that's dealing with a whole different set of things that we don't even go close. All the electromagnetic spectrum, all the information warfare. I mean, we can think that we are there, but we are so not there.
I'm going to say two things. I threw that out there just to see your reaction, but I think to your point,
you wanted.
I knew by the first reaction of the graph, you're like, "Oh my, help me!" But going back to your point, Chris, I do think that there is in the industry some level of mistranslation in terms of what that means. Like if you go back to the executive order, everything's about cybersecurity. You have the NIST framework, cybersecurity. So that word's being pushed a lot, even though we, as AppSec or product security have to meet some of those requirements, like the executive order, there's specific things that we have to meet. And so I think this word has just become now a very overall arching, like I don't know if the definition will change. I don't know what's led, us to this point in time. But I know that word does affect us in all, like in everything that we do when we think about integrating security into what we build.
And actually, really important point about this, I think you're highlighting here, or maybe not highlighting directly, but we'll, maybe you're going to get there, is in terms of scope, right? There's cybersecurity that defends a network, and if you think about it, if you build something for internal consumption, for internal users, maybe you're building a product for internal consumption, your cybersecurity team within your organization is going to be defending that. And you're going to have to build it to those specifications, to those requirements. But if you're building a product, and I'll say the product here in quotes of things that we ship outside the organization, it's somebody else's cybersecurity environment that you're shipping into. Right. And so the scope changes. And it's an interesting way to think about it in terms of not necessarily just what cyber does, but sort of which cyber you're talking about. So as you were talking, that's where my head went to.
And I would add on to that, if you look at the change in, if you look at kind of how we respond to vulnerabilities and you look at the different practices out there, there used to always be certs. And now P-certs started coming up. So, and that's kind of like almost a delineation, like most P-certs are not always going to respond to potentially, they may or may not, like cloud vulnerabilities that would come up or, applications. So I think we're at an actually interesting point in time in terms of all of these different technologies and how we're really just handling them when it comes to responding to the issues.
And I just want to do a quick shout out, Chris. I think that there is somebody who can help us with this over at NIST. I'm going to drop his name because it'd be nice if he was listening to our podcast and maybe he could respond if he hears it. Ron Ross over in NIST land is working on system security engineering and other standard development. And it'd be great to get their perspectives. But
please send us a signal of some form
if he's listening.
I don't know that we solved anything here.
Did we try to?
That was my goal. I came here to try to solve something. That's always my goal.
I don't think we can solve it. I think we can shed some light on top of something like this. But it's such a consensus-driven thing. I mean, how did cyber get so up there? Because people agreed that, it's an umbrella term that can be used, right? I
mean, let's be honest. We all, in certain social situations, when someone says, "What do you do?" Come on. We've all done it. We're like, "Oh, well, I'm in cybersecurity." And they're like, "Ooh, wow, cool." Are you lying? You do. You said you're in cybersecurity. Okay, here, let's pretend we're at a cocktail party. Hello, I'd like a martini. Okay. Sir, what do you do for a living?
Why do you care? What's your problem?
Well, I'm trying to be friends. We're at a cocktail party. We have a shared friend here. What a jerk.
I do computer stuff.
Really? Computer stuff? That's interesting. What type of computer stuff?
Well, I do computer stuff and I am a jerk. I'm in data security.
Well, I think we tried. I'm going to go be friends with the people over there.
No. To be sure. I
look
think
at the
that
time. Gotta go.
particularly because of the distinction of where I think that the cyber label does apply, which is all that good stuff happening in the military domain. I think that I have too much respect for that part of the house to be able to point at myself and say, I do cybersecurity. No, I don't. I secure products.
Okay.
Right?
We can take that. Well, I think we'll leave it there. So thank you, security table folks, for trying to wrestle through this. I think there was some moments of clarity. At least for me, I had some moments of clarity. I don't ever want to be at a cocktail party with Izar. I learned that as well as a takeaway from this. But
and you know what? If this drives a conversation,
and if somebody comes up with a term for what we do,
people learn when they exchange ideas. So
a nice one.
Yeah, a nice term for what we do. That would be, ping us on LinkedIn or Twitter or something. Give us your thoughts. If you somehow have an idea of what we can call this, and you've been yelling into your speakers. No, you need to call it this. Tell us, ping us, tell us. But that'll wrap up this episode of the Security Table, and tune in next week as we continue the conversation.